Hi everyone, my name is Natalie. Today I'm finally sitting down to do my January wrap-up. The end of January and the beginning of February was really hectic, so we're already more than halfway through? Yes, more than halfway through February, and I'm only now getting a chance to sit down. So we'll see what my memory is like with some of these books. Feels like I read them ages ago. But let's start off with the first book I finished in the year, and that is Whose Body by Dorothy Sayers. This is the first book in her Lord Peter Wimsey series, and I picked this up on Sarah from Hardcover Hearts recommendation. It was a lot of fun and sort of the golden age of crime classics that I really enjoy, even though I don't tend to prioritize reading them. Most of what I've read is Agatha Christie, and I really enjoy the Poirot series particularly. I would probably enjoy a lot of the other writers during that era. I just haven't gotten to them, and so I'm really happy to finally have gotten to this one. I would say that it takes a while for you to get a sense of the characters, because Dorothy Sayers just sort of throws you into the situation. She doesn't have a lot of introductions and lengthy explanations of all of the characters and their traits and manners and sort of descriptions of their looks. She just sort of throws you in and you learn about them as you go. But for that reason, it took me a while to sort of warm up to the characters that will probably be recurring in the series. But towards the end of it, I was really enjoying following Lord Peter Wimsey and his butler, I think it is. And so I'm looking forward to continuing on with this series. So that's the first one I read. The second one I read was New Penguin Parallel Text Short Stories in Japanese, and this is an anthology of short stories edited by Michel Emmerich, and I think he has translated a few of the ones, and some of them have been translated by other people as well. Yeah, there's one by Tsushima Yuko that has been translated by Geraldine Harcourt, and one by Yoshida Sueko that is translated by Yukie Ota. But the rest of them have been translated by Emmerich as well. So this was really interesting. This, as you can tell probably from the title of this, is a bilingual edition of short stories in Japanese, and you have the Japanese and English alongside each other. And I think there's about 8 short stories in this. I would say, generally speaking, that I enjoyed the short stories by the women writers much more than the men. Short stories by the female writers, even if I didn't love everything about it, I still felt like it created a imagery strong enough that I could visualize it, that I felt like it was real within the short format of the short story. I think probably one of my favorites in this was A Little Darkness by Banana Yoshimoto. Definitely would recommend if you want a Japanese tool that is also well worth a read. I've read a few Japanese related books this in January because of January in Japan that was hosted by Endnotes, and I think this was the 3rd year or something like that, and I really enjoyed both reading Japanese literature and seeing everything else that was being posted with the hashtag January in Japan. So definitely I recommend going to check that hashtag in Instagram if you want recommendations. So I guess continuing on with the Japanese theme, the next one I have is The Easy Life in Kamusari. The Easy Life in Kamusari by Shion Miura, and this was translated by Juliet Winters Carpenter. So I read this author's previous book, The Great Passage, in January last year, which I absolutely loved. I enjoyed this one not as much as The Great Passage, but definitely I enjoyed it, and it is part of the series, so it does suffer somewhat from being the first in the series and sort of introducing you to a lot of characters. So this is basically about a young man who has finished college. He doesn't have a job or doesn't study for university, and he is sent off by his parents to a village situation to do forestry work, and in this village he gets to know a lot of the locals, and it's just about him sort of coming to terms with this very new lifestyle, and the sudden change of everything in his life, and working really hard, and the sort of the physical labor of it, as well as being an outsider in this tiny community, and the villagers not necessarily being welcoming on the outside, but not always in the most meaningful ways. So it's just about him sort of trying to make this a new home for him. It is part of a series, and the second one in the series is coming out in the English translation this year. The last of the Japanese books I have is In Praise of Shadows by Junichiro Tanizaki, and this was translated by Thomas J. Harper and Edward J. Seidensticker. So Seidensticker is one of the older Japanese translators. A lot of the classics of Japanese literature that was translated, I would say, like from the mid to late 20th century are translated by him or Donald Keene. So you sort of recognize a few names. But anyway, this is a essay on aesthetics, essentially. It is sort of about a lot of things, but basically Tanizaki is talking about Japanese culture and values in terms of aesthetics and in terms of design, in lifestyle, as well as sort of interconnected with various topics. So he will sometimes veer off the tracks and talk about something like a toilet, the design of a toilet, to things like the design of a room and how it uses light and shadow, and the value put in shadows and as a contrast to light, and all of those types of things. And I thought this was fantastic. It is definitely my favorite of the Japanese stuff I read, and definitely up there in terms of my genre reading in general. Hi everyone, so it is another day from when I started filming this wrap up, and I'm just gonna continue on where I left off. I have two library books that I haven't, that I don't have with me anymore. So we have A Bookshop in Algiers by Kaouther Adimi, and this was translated by Chris Andrews from the French. I read this for Algeria for Invisible Cities in January, and this is a book about a bookshop in Algeria and sort of the past and present of the bookshop. The protagonist of the book is in the present day is mostly a man who has come to help disassemble the shop. The owner of the building, I think, forces the owner to close it off, and so the most of the present storyline is told from the man who has been hired to sort of empty out the locale and to prepare it for demolition, I think. Through his work in the last few days of the bookshop's existence, he gets to know somewhat about the history of the place, and then we are thrown into the past with some of the legacy of the bookshop, some of the people who have worked there, some of the interactions the bookshop owner has had with other famous writers, like Albert Camus is one of those names that comes up in the book, which is a kind of complicated name in terms of Algerian history, which is something I've learned through some reading around Algeria in connection with Invisible Cities and some people who have talked about it. For example, on our Discord community, as well as Instagrammers, particularly Feriel from Translated Gems, shared some things about Algerian history and this particular book and its the problematic aspects to the story. So I will link her Instagram below, and she talked about the romanticism of within the book and the problems with that, with the portrayal of Algerian history. But I would urge you to check out her Instagram below. She has some Algerian recommendations as well there. But this was the only one I got to. I enjoyed it. I think the bookshop the sort of the love of books is something that is definitely a central theme in the book, exploring what books can mean to people, particularly what it can mean to people in a experiencing crisis. The idea of coming to books for comfort, coming to books for connection, learning about other people's lives in different cultures, different countries. It was a central theme in the book and something I really enjoyed. It's worth noting the criticism that the book has gotten. And I think I also saw a blog post related to this this context for the book, so I will link that if I can find it. The other book I read as a library book was Linjen by Elise Karlsson. This is a Swedish book and it hasn't gotten an English translation. I don't know if it will. It's a book about working in the 21st century, and there was just a lot of things in this book that I found thought-provoking and interesting to read with this very modern commentary. I don't think it necessarily will count as criticism. It doesn't feel like it doesn't really deconstruct anything. It just comments on it, but it is enjoyable and thought-provoking just based on the things that it's sort of underlining. So it is about a woman who has been in different jobs for a long time and is sort of finally transitioning into this this position of stability. And she's commenting on a lot of things related to working, such as the hierarchies within the working place, the boundaries between people who work and people who don't work or don't have work. So the insider and outsider things. She talks, for example, about people having these the cards to get entry, I don't know what the English word is for this, access cards? Anyway, and she talks about this symbol being a representation of the boundaries between those who belong in the building, those who belong to the working force, and those who do not. And as I said, the hierarchies within the company and the people who have been there for a long time, the people who just came in, the difference in status, the difference in stability in when the company is in crisis. She talks about the instability of having work, of losing work, of working terms. So just a lot of things related to it. And I just found it to be very interesting and like nothing I've read in a Swedish context. So I think just for the recognizable aspects to it and the clarity in the commentary and the sharpness in it, I thought it was well worth the read. The next one I have is a buddy read I did, and this is What Are You Going Through by Sigrid Nunez. I buddy read this with Roxy from Chaotic Bibliophile. I will link her in the description below. And this was my second Sigrid Nunez book. I read The Friend a couple of years ago, I think in 2020. And I was surprised by how much I enjoyed it. I thought I would enjoy it okay, but I didn't expect to enjoy it that much. And even after having read it and enjoying it, I couldn't really put my finger on why I enjoyed it so much. And so part of the reason I've been wanting to read more of her works is trying to figure out what it is that I like about her writing, what connects with me, and I'm still not entirely sure. I enjoy this one not as much as The Friend, but I think this sort of grew on me as I was reading it, and hearing Roxy's point of view as well. So basically this book is about a woman whose friend is in a hospital. She's going through cancer treatment. She goes to visit the friend in the hospital. And they have been friends for a long time, but they haven't really been part of each other's lives for a long time. They sort of become close again through this particular circumstance. And the protagonist, the narrator, spending a lot of time in the hospital with her friend. And then it sort of veers off into different paths. The title of this book is kind of central to the theme as well. So the narrator is sort of trying to be someone who asks someone else, what are you going through? And really listening to what is going on in their lives and being patient and being present. So it sort of becomes quite centrally about friendship, like The Friend. And it also talks a lot about language and writing. When language is not enough, when the words are not enough to explain what we're feeling, how to put certain experiences into words to convey what we're going through, but also the absolute need to do so. So the theme of language and writing is something that seems to be a favored theme for Nunes. It's definitely something that comes up in The Friend as well. And friendship, like I said, particularly the female friendships that I really liked seeing explored in this book. And then my favorite book of January is definitely Year In, Year Out by A. Milne. This is one of his essay collections. I think this is one that is from the 50s. It is a collection of essays / a collection of musings. So each chapter is a month, and within each month he sort of veers off into different topics. Usually each month has at least one section that is specifically on writing. So he talks about writing in all kinds, everything from writing thank you cards to writing plays, and the format of playwriting being very particular because of your relationship with the audience and the audience's reactions to things. It is particularly interesting because A. Milne wrote quite a lot of plays. I haven't read any of them yet, but I plan to in the future. He talks about the fear of an author of being forgotten, of being known for certain books, which is definitely relevant considering he became very synonymous with Winnie the Pooh and Winnie the Pooh only. And he had some issues with that. He talks about his relationship with publishers, his relationship with different types of writing format, of different types of topics, of writing on different topics, just all kinds of things. And some of the essays or some of the sections talk about all other kinds of life. So cricket and gardening and being a hostess of a party or host or hostess of a party, all kinds of things. But I love A. Milne's writing. I love his tone, his humor, his wit. So this was a absolute delight in January. Those are all of the books I want to talk about in this January wrap up. I would love to know if you read any of these, like always, and your thoughts on them. Let me know if you read something good in January. What was the first book you read to start off the year? And yeah, that was all I wanted to say. I hope you're doing well and you're taking care of yourselves, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.